Welcome to Township Talk. This is Steve Kaplan, West Bloomfield Township Supervisor. Our special guest today is Erik Beauchamp, and he is the code enforcement director for West Bloomfield Township. Welcome, Erik.
Thanks for having me.
Erik, how many years have you worked for West Bloomfield Township?
I started in 2000. I started off as the engineering inspector, and then I became the code manager in 2010.
Did you enjoy your prior position before 2010?
I did, because I came from engineering, civil engineering, land surveying background, so it was an easy transition for me to go into the engineering department. I reviewed site plans for new developments, mainly residential homes, and our company did a lot of surveying and site development for many new subdivisions in the township as well as commercial properties, so it was easy for me as I stayed in my background.
So you've ascended the ladder at West Bloomfield Township from code officer. Now you are the department's director. How many
Correct.
staff members work under you?
I have 3 full-time code officers, 1 part-time code officer, and an office coordinator. And as you know, the township is 32 square miles. We have it divided up in 4 zones, so each code officer has their own zone, and they have a familiarity with their area, and I think that works well because they develop a good rapport with the business owners and residents, and it gives both of them a point of contact, so when there's issues come up on both sides, we can resolve them mutually.
In some cities and townships, Erik, the code enforcement division falls under the police department. Do you know of any communities that have police department conducting code enforcement actions?
I think most of them have their own code enforcement department. Some of them do fall under the police department. I think Novi may, but a lot of them are their own entity.
So what is code enforcement? How would you summarize or describe your department?
Well, there's a general statement that people use that code enforcement departments protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. I think our role is really to help maintain property values by reducing blight, outdoor storage, things like that. The township is comprised of a lot of highly educated residents that are successful. They put a lot of money into their businesses and their homes and their property, and I think it's our role as code enforcement to maintain those property values by reducing blight and things of that nature that have a deleterious effect on properties.
What is the township's philosophy on code enforcement? Are we proactive? In other words, do we have code officers driving around looking for minor miscues, minor flaws in a home in order to issue tickets?
No, we're more of a complaint-driven department. If we see something that's really egregious, we'll stop. If there's a health and safety issue, we'll stop and address that. But for the most part, we are complaint-driven, and we will go out there. Basically, when you submit a complaint, you can do it on the township website, you can call, or you can stop in and visit at Town Hall. But generally, we don't go out looking to harass people or look for issues.
What are some of the most common code enforcement violations?
Blight with general trash, rubbish and debris, miscellaneous outdoor storage items, permit violations. In the summertime, a big one is overgrown grass, but those are generally on vacated, foreclosed, bank-owned properties where there's nobody there to maintain it. We send them a notice. If they don't cut the grass, the township has a contractor that will cut the grass. We send them a bill. If they don't pay that bill, then it ends up going on their taxes. But some bank-owned properties have preservation companies that are pretty good in responding to our notices. Some of them don't. We very rarely have an occupied home that has overgrown grass that doesn't respond to our notice. So those are rare occasions that we will cut those properties, mainly just the vacant properties.
Are there any emergency matters you deal with which could immediately affect health, safety, or welfare?
There's some buildings that are so dilapidated and vacated that they become dangerous. So we deal with those and ensure that they're properly secured, and we usually look to get those properties demolished so they don't have a negative effect on the community.
So we know that the township is not actively seeking to issue tickets to people. Do we generally give the homeowner an opportunity to rectify the problem, to cure it before issuing a ticket?
That's correct. The last thing we want to do is be in a ticket business. So we use that as a last resort for compliance. And generally how it works is if we get a complaint, we'll go out and we try to talk to the responsible person, whether it's a business owner or a resident, and we try to let them know what the violation is, what they need to do to correct it. We give them a week to do that, and we'll come back and check on it. If they're not there, we'll leave them a courtesy notice, and we'll check it about a week later. If the problem still exists, then we'll send them a letter, and we'll give them a deadline, and we'll check it at that point in time. Now, it's important to note if they are working towards compliance, working with us, then we extend their compliance date accordingly.
Does your department have the power to condemn a building, at least temporarily, if a dangerous condition exists?
We do. There's certain steps that you have to follow because you're condemning a building, you're taking somebody's property, but we do have that right to do that if it warrants.
Can a person make an anonymous complaint regarding a neighbor who might be violating the code?
Yeah, if a person wants to make a complaint and remain anonymous, we allow them to do that. They just have to state that at the very beginning, and we'll keep their name extracted from the record.
Is demeanor or attitude important? In other words, do you instruct your code officers to treat the public courteously and respectfully, or do we take a hard line when we're approaching an alleged violator?
No, we take a very common sense approach to code enforcement. We got a pretty good staff. They don't go out and forcefully have people do things. We don't threaten people with tickets. We try to work with them mutually to gain compliance. We're very respectful of people's property, their rights, and we just try to work together to resolve the issue at hand.
Are you able to characterize statistically, in terms of code violations, what percentage are intentional on the part of the property owner versus negligent or unknowing?
I think probably only 20% of the people that are working without permits are doing that unknowingly. So most people aren't aware of some of the odd ordinances that we have as far as outdoor storage items, what's allowed, campers, trailers, where they can be placed on your property, things of that nature. One of them is inoperable vehicles. They're not allowed to be stored out in public view, but a lot of times there's a nice looking vehicle that doesn't have a proper plate on it, but we consider that inoperable as well. We don't like to call those junk vehicles because it could be a nice BMW that doesn't have a plate on it, but at the same time they're not allowed to be stored out in public view, so until you get a proper plate on them. So a lot of times people just don't understand that aspect of it, or certain ordinances that they weren't aware of.
You and I work closely, and it's my honor to work with you. What about an instance where we have a code, we have a rule, which might not be reasonable any longer, where, take like a basketball hoop. What if we had a rule that said you can't have a basketball backboard and hoop on your garage, and many people do? Is there a method where the township can revise the code?
You can amend the ordinances if you want to. Our legal counsel would take a look at it, and it would go in front of the board to amend that if we wanted to introduce a new ordinance. I think me and you have the same philosophy as far as the township being an active township, and if those basketball hoops have been in existence for many years, and we didn't want to get in that, be a township that regulates basketball hoops and forcing people to remove them, especially if they've been there for a number of years. So we try not to be that type of enforcement department.
Have you had any cases, Eric, where you have two neighbors, like the Hatfields and the McCoys, they detest one another and they complain against each other?
Yeah, we get a lot of that. The neighbors that aren't getting along, so they will call on each other and report code violations. We have a pretty good system that keeps a history of all the enforcement action on that property. So we know if two people have been going back and forth, like you said, the Hatfields and McCoys, so And we take that into consideration when we go back out there for a third or fourth time with our repeat offenders. But yeah, we get that a lot.
Erik, thank you very much. We enjoyed today's session, and you're a very interesting person, and we appreciate having you work for West Bloomfield Township. This is Township Talk. I'm Steve Kaplan. Thanks for viewing.